The chains of deception Captain Alina Vasquez pressed, her weathered palm against the cold metal wall of mining station Delta 7, feeling the constant vibration of the extraction equipment 3 levels below. At 52, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had never truly been broken, despite 23 years of forced labor. Her dark eyes held secrets that would make the alien overseers tremble if they knew what she was thinking. The morning shift bell echoed through the corridors, and Alina watched as hundreds of humans shuffled past in their regulation gray uniforms. To the casual observer, they looked defeated, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast, moving with the mechanical precision of people who had given up hope long ago. But Alina saw something else. She saw the subtle hand signals pass between workers. She saw the way certain individuals positioned themselves near communication panels. She saw the quiet strength that had kept humanity alive for 2.5 centuries. Alina remembered the stories her grandmother had told her about the day the aliens arrived. It was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. First contact with an advanced galactic civilization. The ships had appeared over every major city on Earth simultaneously, their sleek hulls gleaming like silver promises against the blue sky. The beings who emerged called themselves the Galactic Collective, representatives of 12 different species, who had come to welcome humanity into their grand alliance. The negotiations had lasted 6 months. Earth's leaders had been dazzled by the technology on display, by the promises of unlimited energy, interstellar travel, and scientific advancement beyond their wildest dreams. The aliens spoke of partnership, of mutual benefit, of humanity taking its place among the stars as equals. They had been so convincing, so patient, so seemingly generous with their gifts of knowledge. The trap had been perfectly executed. By the time Earth's governments realized what was happening, it was too late. The partnership agreements contained clauses that effectively made humanity a client species. The gifts of technology came with dependencies that could not be removed. The mutual defense pacts required Earth to provide resources and labor for galactic projects that seemed to benefit everyone except humans. Within 5 years, Earth was strip-mined to support alien colonies. Within 10 years, humans were being relocated to work facilities across the galaxy. Within 20 years, Earth itself was declared uninhabitable due to necessary resource extraction, and the remaining population was scattered among dozens of worlds as a captive workforce. The Collective Council had voted unanimously. All 12 species agreed that humanity was too dangerous to be left free, too useful to be eliminated, and too numerous to be ignored. They would be controlled, contained, and put to productive use for the benefit of galactic civilization. It was, they claimed, the most humane solution to the human problem. Alina shook off the dark memories as footsteps approached her position. Dr. Marcus Chen rounded the corner, his thin frame moving with the careful precision of someone who had learned to attract no attention. At 45, Marcus possessed one of the most brilliant minds humanity had ever produced, though he spent his days pretending to be nothing more than a maintenance technician for alien machinery. "The Nexus meeting is tonight," Marcus whispered, as he passed, barely moving his lips. "Sublevel 7, after second shift. The Council has responded to our recent activities." Alina nodded almost imperceptibly. The Nexus was their name for the secret network that connected human-resistant cells across 37 different worlds. It had taken them nearly 2 centuries to build, growing slowly and carefully to avoid detection by the Collective's surveillance systems. Every member was carefully vetted, every communication was triple encrypted, and every meeting was planned with the kind of precision that only comes from generations of practice. As the day wore on, Alina performed her assigned duties with the same mindless efficiency expected of all human workers. She operated the ore sorting machines, cleaned the equipment, and filed reports in the alien computer systems. To anyone watching, she was just another broken human going through the motions of survival, but beneath the surface, her mind was racing with possibilities. The resistance had been patient, so patient that many humans had begun to believe they were truly defeated. But Alina knew better. She knew about the hidden facilities that had been carved out of asteroids in remote systems. She knew about the humans who had volunteered to spend their entire lives working on projects that would benefit generations they would never see. She knew about the technology that had been developed in secret, improved upon, and prepared for a day that most people thought would never come. That evening, Alina made her way through the maintenance tunnels to sublevel 7. The meeting space was hidden behind a false wall in an abandoned section of the station, shielded from detection by clever modifications to the alien scanning equipment. 23 people were already waiting when she arrived, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of portable screens. Marcus stood at the center of the group, a holographic display floating above his wrist device. The image showed a star map with dozens of points of light connected by thin lines. Each point represented a human population center, and each line represented a communication link in their hidden network. The collective council met 3 days ago, Marcus began, his voice barely above a whisper. Our coordinated strikes on the processing facilities have gotten their attention. For the first time in 2 centuries, they're taking us seriously as a threat. Alina felt a thrill of satisfaction. The strikes had been small, seemingly random acts of sabotage that the aliens had initially blamed on equipment failures. But as the pattern became clear, they had been forced to acknowledge that humanity was capable of organized resistance. "What's their response?" asked Sarah Kim, a 30-year-old engineer who had been born in captivity but retained the fierce spirit of her ancestors. Marcus manipulated the display, and new information appeared. They're implementing Protocol 7 across all human facilities. Increased surveillance, restricted movement, mandatory loyalty screenings, and execution of anyone suspected of resistance activities. The room fell silent. Protocol 7 was something they had all feared but hoped would never be implemented. It would make their operations infinitely more difficult and put thousands of innocent humans at risk. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Our sources in the collective command structure report that they're planning something called the final solution. Details are classified, but it appears to involve a significant reduction in human population numbers." Alina felt her blood turn cold. They had always known this day might come. The day when the aliens decided that humanity was more trouble than it was worth. The day when their usefulness as a workforce was outweighed by the threat they posed to galactic stability. "How long do we have?" Alina asked. 6 months, maybe less," Marcus replied. "The implementation timeline depends on how quickly they can coordinate across all 12 species." Alina stood and moved to the front of the group. These people had followed her for over a decade, trusting her judgment even when the odds seemed impossible. Now she had to ask them to trust her with something that would either save humanity or destroy them all. "Then it's time," she said simply. "We implement Phoenix Protocol." The reaction was immediate. Some people gasped, others leaned forward with excitement, and a few looked terrified. Phoenix Protocol was their most ambitious plan developed over decades, and kept secret from all but the highest levels of the resistance. It was their last resort, their final gambit, and their only real hope for freedom. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. "Once we start Phoenix, there's no going back. The aliens will know exactly what we're capable of, and they'll respond with everything they have." Alina looked around the room at faces that represented the best of humanity. People who had sacrificed everything for a dream of freedom they might never live to see. People who had kept hope alive through generations of slavery and oppression. People who deserved better than to die as property of an alien collective. "They're going to try to exterminate us anyway," she said. "At least this way, we go down fighting. And maybe, just maybe, we take them with us." The vote was unanimous. After 250 years of slavery, humanity was finally ready to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The chains were about to be broken, and the collective council was about to learn why their ancestors had been right to fear the species from the small blue planet in hidden bases. Across 37 worlds, humans began to prepare for the greatest battle in galactic history. Ships that had been built in secret for decades powered up their engines. Weapons that incorporated technology beyond anything the collective possessed were brought online. And soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment took their positions. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that breaking humanity's spirit would break their ingenuity. They had assumed that controlling their movements would control their minds. They had assumed that scattered populations could never coordinate a unified response. They were about to discover just how wrong they had been. Asterisk. Alina returned to her quarters that night and stared out the small window at the stars beyond. Tomorrow would begin the final phase of the longest war in human history. Tomorrow would determine whether humanity would finally be free or whether they would die fighting for that freedom. Either way, the galaxy would remember what happened when you enslaved the descendants of Earth. Asterisk. The final reckoning commander, Thane of the Zelithian High Fleet, stood on the bridge of the Dreadnought Sovereigns. Will, staring at the tactical display with growing unease. The reptilian alien's scaled hands gripped the command rail as he processed information that should have been impossible. Across 17 different star systems, human work facilities had gone silent within the span of 6 hours. "Status report," Thane commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen human populations for 30 years. "Sir, we've lost contact with Mining Station Delta 7, Processing Facility, Gamma 12, and Colony Base Epsilon 9, reported his tactical officer, a nervous Aquarian whose tentacles writhed with anxiety. All facilities reported normal operations, then their communications simply ... stopped. Thane's yellow eyes narrowed. In 3 decades of managing human labor forces, he had never seen anything like this. Individual acts of sabotage, yes. Small-scale riots, occasionally. But coordinated action across multiple star systems. Impossible. The humans were scattered, demoralized, and constantly monitored. They had no means of communication beyond their work assignments. "Send reconnaissance ships to investigate," Thane ordered, "and contact the Collective Council. They need to know about this immediately." What Commander Thane didn't know was that Alina Vasquez was watching his ship from the command deck of the human vessel Phoenix Rising. The ship itself was a masterpiece of engineering that had taken 50 years to complete, built in sections within the hollowed-out core of an asteroid in a system the aliens had written off as worthless. Its hull incorporated metamaterials that could bend light around it, making it effectively invisible to alien sensors. Its weapons were powered by fusion reactors that operated on principles the collective had never discovered. "All strike teams report ready, Captain," announced Dr. Marcus Chen from his position at the tactical station. His fingers danced across holographic controls that would have seemed like magic to the aliens who thought they understood human technology. Alina nodded, her eyes fixed on the massive alien fleet that had been humanity's oppressors for so long. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every person on the ship was a volunteer who understood they might not survive the next few hours. But they also understood that their sacrifice would mean freedom for billions of humans across the galaxy. "Signal all ships," Alina commanded. "Operation Phoenix is a go. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who died in alien labor camps. We're fighting for every child who was born into slavery. We're fighting for the right of humanity to exist as equals in this galaxy." Across 37 star systems, the coordinated attack began. Ships that had been hidden for decades emerged from asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment revealed their true purpose. And humans who had spent their lives pretending to be broken slaves suddenly demonstrated capabilities that shocked their alien overseers. On mining station Delta 7, the facility where Alina had spent years planning this moment, human workers simultaneously activated hidden devices that had been built into the alien machinery over decades. The station's power core overloaded in a carefully controlled cascade that disabled every surveillance system and communication array while leaving the humans unharmed. Within minutes, what had been a prison became a fortress under human control. Commander Thane watched in horror as his reconnaissance ships encountered human vessels that shouldn't have existed. The Phoenix Rising decloaked directly in front of his flagship, its weapons already charging. But instead of firing immediately, it opened a communication channel. Elena's face appeared on Thane's main screen, and for the first time in 30 years, the alien commander was looking at a human who showed no fear, no submission, no acknowledgement of alien authority. "Commander Thane," Alina said calmly, "I am Captain Alina Vasquez of the Human Liberation Fleet. You have 30 seconds to surrender your ship and order all Zelithian forces in this system to stand down." Thane's jaw dropped. The human was speaking Galactic standard perfectly, but more than that, she was speaking as an equal, as someone with authority, as someone who expected to be obeyed. "This is impossible," Thane hissed. "Your slaves, you, have no ships, no weapons, no technology capable of threatening collective forces." Alina smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Commander, you've been making assumptions about humanity for 2.5 centuries. Today, you learn the truth. We've been watching you, learning from you, and most importantly, we've been preparing for you." The Phoenix Rising fired a single shot that passed through the Sovereign's wills, shields, as if they weren't there. The bolt struck the Dreadnought's main weapon array and disabled it completely without damaging any other system. It was a demonstration of precision that should have been impossible with any known technology. "How?" Thane whispered. "You made the mistake of thinking that controlling our bodies meant controlling our minds," Alina replied. "Every human you assigned to maintain your equipment was also studying it. Every human you forced to work in your factories was also learning your manufacturing processes. Every human you relocated was also mapping your supply lines and communication networks. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human forces revealed themselves to the 12 species of the collective. The Aquarians, who had controlled human populations through fear, found their water-based homeworlds surrounded by human ships that could operate in environments they had thought were impregnable. The crystalline hierarchy, who had provided the legal framework for human enslavement, discovered that their supposedly perfect justice computers had been infiltrated and reprogrammed decades ago. The insectoid swarms, who had used their hive mind intelligence to coordinate surveillance of human populations, found their communication networks completely compromised. Every order they had ever given, every plan they had ever made, every secret they had ever shared had been recorded and analyzed by human intelligence networks they had never suspected existed. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when the Collective Council convened an emergency session on the neutral station, Nexus Prime, as the representatives of 12 species gathered to coordinate their response to the human uprising. They discovered that the chamber itself had been under human observation for over a century. Elena's face appeared on the council chamber's main screen, and this time she was accompanied by representatives from human populations across the galaxy. They stood together, no longer wearing the grey uniforms of slaves but the proud insignia of a free people. Honored members of the Collective Council, Elena began, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. For 250 years, you have profited from human suffering. You have built your civilizations on our backs, expanded your territories with our labor, and enriched yourselves through our slavery. High Counselor Vex of the Zalathians rose from his seat, his massive frame trembling with rage. You will cease this rebellion immediately. You are property of the collective, subject to our laws and our authority. Elena's expression didn't change. Counselor Vex, you are no longer in a position to make demands. At this moment, human forces control the hyperspace lanes between your homeworld and your military bases. Your fleet is surrounded and outgunned. Your supply lines have been cut. And most importantly, your people are finally seeing the truth about what you've done. She gestured, and the display showed footage from across the galaxy. Humans working not as slaves, but as engineers, scientists, and soldiers. Human ships that incorporated technology beyond anything the collective possessed. Human colonies that had been built in secret while the aliens believed they were managing helpless prisoners. You see, you made one critical error, Elena continued. You assumed that because you could control our movements, you had broken our spirit. You assumed that because you scattered us across the galaxy, we couldn't work together. You assumed that because we seemed defeated, we had actually given up. Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward. What you didn't realize is that every human you relocated carried knowledge with them. Every facility you established became a training ground for our people. Every generation born into slavery was also raised with the dream of freedom and the skills to achieve it. The truth was finally revealed in its full scope. Humanity had been playing the longest game in galactic history. For 250 years, they had appeared broken while secretly building the most advanced technological civilization the galaxy had ever seen. They had submitted to slavery while simultaneously undermining the very foundations of the collective's power. High Counselor Morpheus of the crystalline hierarchy spoke, his crystalline form resonating with confusion and fear. But the psychological evaluations, the behavioral studies, all of our data indicated complete subjugation. Elena smiled. Those evaluations measured what we wanted you to see. Every human who appeared broken was playing a role. Every act of submission was part of a larger strategy. Every generation that seemed to accept slavery was actually preparing the next generation to be free. The revelation sent shockwaves through the collective council. Species that had considered themselves the masters of the galaxy suddenly realized they had been outmaneuvered by the very beings they had enslaved. The humans hadn't just survived their oppression, they had thrived in spite of it. "What do you want?" asked Councillor Zara of the Aquarian Federation, her tentacles curled in defeat. Alina considered the question carefully. Around her, the representatives of free humanity waited for her answer. They had the power now to extract any price they wanted. They could enslave their former masters, destroy their worlds, or simply take what they pleased through force. "We want what you denied us for 2.5 centuries, Alina said finally. "We want recognition as equals in this galaxy. We want reparations for the billions of humans who died in your labor camps. We want the return of our homeworld and the resources you stole from us. And most importantly, we want your word that no species will ever again be subjected to the treatment you gave humanity." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But we also offer something you never offered us. The chance for redemption. Species that acknowledge their crimes and work to make amends will find humanity to be generous allies. Species that continue to resist or attempt to maintain the old system will find us to be implacable enemies." The collective council faced a choice that would reshape the galaxy. They could accept humanity's terms and begin the long process of making amends for centuries of oppression. Or they could fight a war they had already lost against an enemy they had vastly underestimated. As Alina ended the transmission and the human fleet maintained its positions around key collective worlds, the representatives of 12 species began to understand that the galaxy would never be the same. The slaves they had created had become their masters, and the only question now was whether they would choose wisdom or destruction. Humanity had spent 250 years preparing for this moment. Now it was time for the galaxy to decide what came next. Asterisk.